Now then, hello. Welcome to English at Leeds Trinity podcast. I'm Richard Storer. I'm a lecturer in English at Leeds Trinity, and our title for this episode is D is for Dialect. And so we're going to be thinking about different aspects of the topic of dialect, particularly dialects in English, and particularly dialects around where we are today, which is in Yorkshire. Now, I'm very pleased that joining me are two students at Leeds Trinity. And so, first of all, welcome to Eloise.
You all right?
And then welcome for the first time to Ben.
Hey up.
Right, thank you. And so, as you'll noticed, everybody up to now has always said hello, but we specifically wanted to try and introduce some variations on the standard greeting of hello. And so I asked both Ben and Eloise if there was something that they were perhaps used to hearing in the part of the world where they grew up. And so that's why we got a few different ones. And I also tried "nah then," which I would say is a Yorkshire one, not one that I myself use, but do hear. And then we had "all right," and then we had "you're right," and we had, what was yours?
Hey up.
A up, yeah. So I suppose we're really going to be thinking about regional dialect. And so first thing we need to establish is where everybody comes from. We talked a bit about this in previous episodes. So I come from Surrey, where I wouldn't say there's a whole lot of regional dialect going on, unless you count the whole of London and the southeast as a region, which I suppose you very well can. And then there's lots of dialect. Ben, where are you from?
Just across the way over in Yeadon, which is a small town just sort of outside of Leeds, about 10 miles away
Right.
from the centre.
Okay, yeah. So it's on the edges of Leeds.
Yeah.
And Eloise, we were saying before where you come from, but just tell us again.
I'm from Salford, which is a borough in the north of Manchester.
Right. Now, I was just looking beforehand for Salford dialect, and what I discovered, you can always discover something like that on the wonders of the internet. 16 phrases you need to know if you are coming to Salford, which has been put up there for the benefit of any students going to the University of Salford by their Students' Union. And so I thought it would be quite interesting just to try out a few of these and see whether these terms, whether you recognise them, but also whether we think they are really definitely terms that would, you wouldn't hear them until you go to Salford, and if you need to know them because everyone will be saying them.
Yeah.
So what we've got, some of them I'm a bit unconvinced by. Like I think there's mint, but I think that is just found.
Yeah, I think that's
everywhere.
just a British thing, to be honest.
Yeah, it's kind of everywhere.
But this next one, we may be onto something. Feel angin me.
Angin, yeah.
Angin me, yeah.
Yeah, so angin basically means disgusting. Like, you could be eating something and you'd be like, oh, this is angin this. Or, oh, I feel proper angin me today, like under the weather or anything.
Right. So, I mean, I've got to say, I never had heard that before. What about you, Ben?
Never heard that term, hanging. I initially thought it meant like hungover, sort of like I'm hanging this morning. Yeah. But no, and I've never heard it in that sense before.
Angin. And you tend to kind of really do the and the g, so angin.
Yeah, it's a very aggressive word. Like, you'd hear it a lot in school if people were arguing. They'd be like, oh, you're angin. And it's very aggressive, the ang. It's very,
right, well,
very argumentative.
That's interesting then. And I'll just try a couple more. Swear down.
Yeah. I don't know if that... I think that must be just a British thing as well.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like people down south would probably say that. Maybe more kids. Like, oh, I swear on my mum's life, I wouldn't
yes.
say that.
I would swear that, but I wouldn't say swear down. You see, so that could be the variation.
Yeah, swear down.
Swear down. The example they've given here is a useful phrase you might want to use if you're out and about on the streets.
I guess we kind of shorten it from like, oh, I swear on my mum's life, it's just swear down.
Swear down, yeah.
And you don't have to say anything else or more than that.
Here they suggest you say, I'm not lying, mate, I swear down on me dog's life. So...
Swear down.
So that one is a possible that it could be. And what was the other one? Give us a chuddy.
Yeah, chudder. Chuddy is just chewing gum, but I think, Ben, you'd say that as well, wouldn't
Yeah,
you?
yeah, it's quite common, like, as a word here. So it's just, you know, you just, if you want a piece of chewing gum, just give us some chuddy.
Mm.
And give your head a wobble.
Yeah, so it's just basically like, oh, you need to have a word with yourself, or like you need to look in the mirror, like you
Right.
need to give your head a wobble, like sort yourself out.
Right.
I don't know
Okay.
if you'd say.
No, that one's new to me.
We wouldn't say that. We'd maybe say, like, sort your sen out, or something like that.
Oh, your sen,
Yeah,
yeah.
so-
Sort your sen out.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll come back to that because that's an interesting thing going on at the end of the word, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, right. So there we are. I think we think that some of these are genuine, possibly candidates for Salford dialect. So we'll come back to that in a little while. Now, Ben, it's very good to welcome you to English at Leeds Trinity podcast. And although you haven't been in an episode before, in a way you have, because our very first episode we talked about the word apricot, and we mentioned that I mentioned that there was a student I'd discussed this with before, who in fact tends to pronounce the word apricot.
Yeah. That is me.
And so it's good to have you. And then what we did was we went to the OED just to see what their take on it is. So let's just hear what the OED says is the pronunciation, the Oxford English Dictionary, what its pronunciation of it is.
Apricot.
Let's have it a couple more times.
Apricot. Apricot.
There we are. So they don't give us apricot.
No, there's no other alternative on the OED.
Yeah. So that is quite interesting, I think. And so we did sort of talk about that a bit in the first episode. And then, since then, a listener to the first episode has actually pointed out to me, this is Amanda from Leeds, has given me the information that a famous example of someone else saying apricot is in the song by Carly Simon, You're So Vain. A song from 1971, but you know it,
Yeah,
Eloise,
I've
don't
definitely
you?
heard it.
Yeah. Because that contains the line, something, 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 like you're walking onto a yacht, I can't remember the rest, but then it says, your scarf, it was apricot. And I think, last time we were saying, we think we've heard it, even though it's not verified by the Oxford English Dictionary. I think that was certainly what I was probably thinking of. So you've got at least one.
Yeah, I've only heard it in one other place, and it was not so long ago. It was like last week. I was just at home, and my girlfriend was watching Gilmore Girls on my TV, and I heard it was Melissa McCarthy's character. I heard her. I think she cooks in the program, and she was using apricot, and that's what she said as an ingredient. And I'm forever, getting the mick taken out of me at home for it. But it was interesting when they heard an actress that they know well say apricot, because they thought I was completely wrong.
That would never happen in my house because we never have apricots. So it's interesting that you live in such an apricot-rich environment where it becomes an issue. So that's great. So the evidence is building that, in fact, the OED might need to start thinking about putting apricot in there, as we've got two definite hits there. And actually, there's also that Carly Simon song has been sort of booted through being used in the film How to Lose a Man in 10 Days. And apparently that's also then gone sort of a bit viral on TikTok. I'm not saying I verified that myself, but that's what I read. But what I did do was I looked up the scene where, in fact, in this film, there's several points at which the two main characters, Kate Hudson and Matthew McConaughey, sing this song to each other. And interestingly, in one bit, she sings it and she sings apricot, but another bit, he then imitates her singing it and he sings apricot. So there we are.
Yeah.
I'm very glad you brought that into our awareness, and we might come back to that one with any more evidence. So if anyone else thinks they know of an example of which we can verify of it being pronounced apricot, then please do let us know. Now, I mention that particularly because that brings up the question of how we talk about dialect, which is our main topic today. And it's a popular topic, but one way of thinking about it is to distinguish between accent and dialect. And I think that works quite well with the word apricot, because I think there's no doubt apricot is the same word across the whole of the UK. I don't think there's any alternative words for it. And you're not saying a different word when you say apricot, you're just pronouncing it differently. Mm-hmm. So there's an interesting variation in terms of phonology, but it's not a variation at any other level. And that, I think, is the framework that's often used for thinking about dialect, that it's not so much about how you pronounce words, but it's about what words you use and what the accepted rules are for how you use them, and also how you form them. For example, we already had the example of this "en," didn't we, where instead of ending that word with self, you use a different ending, sen. So what words you use, what rules you have for combining them, how you form the words, and then also whether words have different meanings, the same word but has different meanings in regions. So that would be semantics. So basically lexis, syntax, morphology and semantics are kind of 4 levels we can think about dialect when we set aside phonology. But in practice, we never can make it quite as clear as that, because accent will always be coming into the discussion. So we'll see how far we go with that. But I thought that leads on to the question then. Can we think of examples from our different regions, although I will say about Yorkshire rather than where my original region, of things that genuinely are dialectal differences there? So maybe, well, most likely probably to be words that are different, but it might be other things as well. So did you have anything, Eloise, there?
So I was thinking ginnel. I haven't met anyone else outside of Manchester that says ginnel. I know that in Sheffield they say ginnel, and I think that's the closest, but it's still a little bit different.
Yes. So what is a ginnel?
Ginnel is like a sort of cut through, like in an estate. It might be just a very slim sort of alleyway type thing.
Mm. Yeah, that's how I know it from living in Sheffield when I did, and it was the alleyway that goes through a block of terraced houses, so you can get to the back.
Yeah.
Only we called it a ginnel, or even a gennel. So that's one that's definitely regional, because I grew up referring to something like that, where it existed as like an alleyway. Mm. That would really be the main example.
Yeah, I always thought that was the American way of saying it until I moved out of Manchester and then realised that other people say alleyway, and then I was like, is ginnel not the right word?
I think it's because like typically like when you think of alleyway, like your mind instantly goes to like maybe like New York or something. It's like quite an American way of saying it. But I mean, the way that I'd say it, I'd either choose between ginnel or another one that is like common over here is snicket. So we'd call it a snicket, just a little cut through where you go in between buildings. Yeah, I
suppose cut through might be another
one
possibly.
The little cut through
is used. Yeah. But snicket, yes, I mean that's a really distinctive word, isn't it? I'd be quite interested to find out what the
I'd never heard of that one.
What the origin of that one is. In fact, what the origin of ginnel is as well. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure the origin of alleyway would be the French word aller. Mm. So it's the way you go through. But those others, they I think they're probably more Germanic in origin.
I have no idea, because even if I'm typing it on my phone, it still tries to autocorrect it to literally anything else apart from ginnel. So I don't know if it's an actual word.
Okay, well that's an interesting thing in itself, how autocorrect are set up to cope with dialect. So did you have an example of what you would say would be a distinctively Yorkshire word, Ben?
I think if I think about it, there's not so much like ones that I can think of at the top of my head about Leeds, but there's ones around Leeds and in Yorkshire, especially Sheffield, and it's common from a very popular song by the Arctic Monkeys called Mardy Bum, and Mardy means to be moody, to be grumpy. Up in Leeds, we'd probably just say grumpy or moody, but they they choose to use Mardy. But there's other ones as well. I think most of my knowledge comes from probably like pop music, but local pop music. So like the Kaiser Chiefs, they in one of their songs, I Predict a Riot, they omit the letters off of words to make it sound more predominantly Yorkshire. Instead of saying lad, they use la instead and remove the D completely.
Yeah. So that immediately illustrates the issue of accent and dialect actually overlapping, because is it sort of the same word, different pronunciation, or is it something else? It doesn't quite fit the model that I was trying to use.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the Kaiser Chiefs one is more based on accent because it's not changing anything really. But then the dialect comes in when it's like Mardy is a completely different word that is only really used in Sheffield. Yeah. Like I wouldn't use it up here, and I don't think you'd use it in Manchester. Or would you use it in Manchester or
Mardy?
Mardy.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, so I'm gonna
say it. And then
maybe
we'll cut it if it's not.
But my dad always says mad ass. Instead of you being mad, he'd call you a mad ass.
Right. So it does seem to me to be similar.
Yeah.
Because it means it's still to do with being in a bad mood, isn't it?
But you wouldn't just. I've never heard anyone say marder, and people don't just say mad on its own. It's you're being a mad ass.
Right.
Like you're crying a lot.
Yeah. So it's it has actually taken a different form. It's kind of combined with something else, whereas Mardy's got the Y suffix.
We probably got that from Sheffield, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, they're probably like, I just wonder where the mad comes from, because is it like a dialect word that's been changed from the accent of mood? So, has it gone down and then they've pronounced the two O's differently?
Well, what we will do before we finish is we will look up Mardy and Snicket and Ginnell on the OED, and then we'll have a little update at the end. I used to live in Sheffield, and that's where I learned the word Mardy. Not that I particularly use it, but I remember when I was asking somebody once, Mardy, what's that mean? They said, when you've got face on, which is another kind of interesting expression. Yeah. Got face on. Yeah. Not got a face on, but just got face on. So it's kind of syntactically different.
That is actually the lyrics of Mardy Bum as well.
Right.
So he's probably just
so there we are. I was in Sheffield before the Arctic Monkeys started. So, but since then, it's obviously they have exported this some of the local dialect. Then the expression I was thinking of when I did first move into a house in Sheffield, and I had a next door neighbour who was a real old Sheffielder, was an elderly gentleman who had lived there a long time. So he had a lot of dialect expressions, much more than I think you would find if you moved into a house there now. And the first time I had a conversation with him, at the end of the conversation, I said, I've got to go and do something else now. And he said, "Nay, I don't want to keep thee from thy business, son." And that really stuck in my mind, because there were three words there that I just hadn't. I'd moved there from Swindon in Wiltshire, and I hadn't heard those. No one saying nay, or thee, or thy, and so that was really interesting that it was still kind of everyday language for him there.
Yeah, I mean, they're quite still commonplace up here, especially if you go towards like the more, where I'm from in Yeadon, it's kind of like a little farming sort of town, and there's a lot of farms nearby, and the very rural farmers will use thee and tha, and like thou and thee, thy, stuff like that.
So that's tending to kind of confirm the sort of picture that the more metropolitan we become, the more we sort of get into large cities and everything, then to a certain extent a lot of traditional dialect will start to be shared more widely, or just sort of cease to be recognised as dialect. More distinctive things need to be in slightly more remote.
Yeah, but I think for those like metropolitan areas, it's kind of become a joke.
Yeah,
so me and my dad, we're not farmers ourselves or anything like that, but me and my dad, as jokingly, will say, "Oh, it's thee and me."
Yeah.
Like, but we don't like laugh about it, but it just comes out when we're there.
So with a certain amount of irony, it's used. Right, that's really interesting. Okay, well, I thought what we might do now is we've been thinking about Yorkshire dialect and Salford dialect in the 21st century, where perhaps regional dialects are kind of perhaps harder to access. There's not so many words, but we could take it right back 300 years or more and look at an example of an early study of dialect. And so that is a passage from a text that was first published in 1683, and the title of this book, it's a poem, a long poem which is in the form of a dialogue between people living on a farm somewhere in North Yorkshire. And it's called A Yorkshire Dialogue in its pure natural dialect, as it is now commonly spoken in the north parts of Yorkshire. And that's what it says on the title of the book. There's a bit of not very much information about who wrote it, but it is an early example of somebody researching a dialect and then kind of composing literature in that dialect as a way of presenting it to other people. So it's a kind of self-conscious exercise in using the dialect. And I think what's interesting about it particularly is it's creative writing. So as soon as people start researching dialect, it's quite likely they will also then start creating new text in the dialect as a way of sort of sharing it. And the other thing is, because it's an 18th century, 17th century book, it's got a very long title page, as you can see, a lot of information on the title front page. And towards the bottom, there's a little verse, which the author, whoever he was, I think it's thought to be somebody called George Meryton, but that's based on just tangential evidence. Reader hears folly, come and laugh thy fill. He ne'er did good, that never did no ill. So saying to the reader of this book, here's folly, come and laugh thy fill. Again, you can see there that the idea that it actually can be fun to study dialect. Actually, when we hear different dialects, there can be a kind of comic element to it. I wouldn't say this book is particularly trying to be disrespectful. I think much the opposite, really. But the writer is aware that people might immediately want to ridicule it. And so he's sort of anticipating that and saying, it's okay, we can have a laugh about this, but actually it is quite a serious bit of work as well. So what we're going to do, we're going to have a little read of a bit of this. It's basically a dialogue between the farmer and his wife and their daughter and their son. Their landlord comes in a bit later on, and there's also a couple of other members of the family. We've got a bit here where the farmer and his wife are talking. First the farmer's wife and then the farmer. Now, Ben is going to have a go at reading this. Compared to 21st century Yorkshire dialect, there is a lot more words in here that are harder to get. But you have a go at reading it, and then we'll have a little go at picking out some dialect words and seeing what's going on. But thank you for having a go at it.
No, do you want me to pause in between certain points if you want to talk about it? Or?
Look, we'll hear the whole thing, and then we'll go back over it.
Come tack up with beef tibs, is double ready. Thy father and ob mun gang tuth smiddy, and fetch the specks, sock and coulter hither. Speed times now come, they mun save saw haver. Stride tib and clart some cassons out off earn. Then gear thy ways and fetch a skeel of burn, and hing the pan earth fire, ith wrecking crook, and eyes wesheth sile, and dishes up in th nook. And thou we'll all go to bed. Here's a card neat, but husband eyes cling close, and we splend feet. Pray thee do, Peg, than eyes get up ith morn, and late some pokes, and put up our seed corn. Then thou may sareth goats and gilts with draff, and eyes give yards some hindrance and calf. Then for our breakfast thou may hate some kale, till I lie on my shackforth and my flail.
So thank you very much. Thank you. I felt you were definitely getting into the a little bit, drawing on your experience of saying thee and me and everything at home.
Yeah, there's certain things where you can really easily slip into that, like Yorkshire, and then there's some where it's like your eyes are trying to catch up with you talking.
Yeah, so. Indeed. So I think it's fair to say anybody reading that is going to say, I'm not really sure. No matter how Yorkshire they are in the 21st century, they are just not going to be able to understand what all that says, because there's a lot of words in there where in terms of dialect words, they just aren't around, I think, anymore. And then there's also a few other examples of the syntax and morphology that kind of come to mind. They mun is at one bit, isn't it? They mun, which is a variant way of saying they must. Mm-hmm. And we've got thy, then gay thy ways. So that's something I can recognise. But let's just try and make sense of it, because we're not on our own here. Another interesting feature of this book is that when it was, I think, the second edition of it or the third edition, whoever wrote it added to it what they labelled, strange word, a clavis, which is a rare word that comes straight from Latin that means key. And then that is basically a list of what all the words mean. So it's, we might call it a glossary or a word list or whatever. It's interesting, they've gone for a really, really scholarly word, clavis. You couldn't really think of a word that's sort of further removed from the language of the farmer and his wife in their farm, sort of emphasising the way in which this is framed. You know, it's a scholar giving you the fruits of their research into the dialect. But this clavis is very useful, and so we can find out what most words mean. So what line is there any particular lines you would like to go back to try and translate, Ben?
I think like the ones that it's line 50, and eyes give yards, some hindreds and calf.
Yeah. So he's talking about, let's do the two lines before that. So it's, than thou may sarra the goats and gilts with draff, and eyes give yards, some hindreds and calf. So he's definitely talking about what he's going to do in the morning, which is go and feed the animals. And the first animal, I think we can get.
Yeah, the goat.
The goats. Thou may sarra the goats. Gilts. That is a word I think is still around in agricultural context, I think, or maybe it's not disappeared too long ago.
Gilts.
But
What does gilts mean?
Gilts, young sow pigs.
Oh.
I've not heard of
Right,
that before.
okay. I may have got that from way back. So it is, then thou may sarra, which is supply food to.
Sarah.
So you may feed the goats and the gilts, the pigs, with draff, which is brewer's grains, wash or swill given to pigs.
It kind of makes sense, draft, because if it's brewer's grains, it's like draft, as in beer.
That's true.
So
Could be a connection there.
a draft, yeah.
Yeah, brewer's grains is what it says it is. So go and feed the pigs that pig swill, which we get from the brewer. And eyes give yards, some hinder ends and calf. So yards or yauds, I'm not sure how it would be.
Would it be you all?
Well, it says here that it is a yard is a horse.
Oh.
So I didn't see that coming.
No.
It's just nothing like the word for horse, or like any other word for horse that I can see. What's the not like the French word for horse? Not like
No, I don't know.
yeah. So that's yard horse. So he's going to give the yards some hinder ends or hinder ends. That's refuse of corn after winnowing. So that's little bits of leftover corn. And calf. Now we might possibly get this one, calf. Another thing that you get when you kind of are processing corn or wheat and you've beaten up and got all the good stuff out. What's left? Do you know what the word is? Chaff, apparently. Is that familiar? No. Okay, that's it. So I do know the word chaff. Separate the wheat from the chaff is an old expression.
Okay.
And so that word there, calf, is obviously chaff with a different consonant at the beginning. Yeah, so just in 2 lines, we needed to use the key about 6 times.
Yeah. It's like translating a different language.
Yeah,
Those lines.
yeah. Which I'm sure is exactly the effect that the person who wrote it sort of wanted. For whatever reason, I don't think it can have been just that he wanted to have a bit of fun, although he anticipated that. I think this is part of a genuine start of research into dialect. Going to a place and listening to what people say, and then kind of doing the linguistic research on it.
See, I was going to say it's unlikely that any of this is like exaggerated, considering that this is like, I know it's like fiction, but considering this is the things he's heard and then he's putting it into a story, it's unlikely that any of it is false. Like these are all words that he has heard.
You imagine he wouldn't make up words, you're right,
Yeah.
yes. I think that what you can never tell, and this is what the study of dialect, I think, is always it's difficult to actually get at the dialect in its actual use, isn't it? Especially when it's in the past. So we have to rely on someone else has recreated it. And I think sometimes they might very well exaggerate it a bit, not make up words, but they may kind of make it more strange than it might have been. I find this, when you're trying to research or you're studying more modern examples of dialects, in American literature and things like that. You think, is that actually how people are speaking, or have they just kind of put in as many features as they can?
Yeah, it's like they've took every slang word
Yeah,
they've ever heard and put it all in one sentence.
Sometimes it does seem like that,
whereas
doesn't it?
maybe they would just use
Yeah.
one in a sentence usually when they're speaking.
So I think that's one of the kind of interesting issues around studying dialect, but studying dialect when it's represented in literature. And one other feature of that line I thought was interesting: eyes give yords some hinderheads and calf. So he means I will give yords, but he's used the expression eyes. So there's a different way of forming the what we would say I will. They're saying eyes. It was the same when the wife said, husband, than we'll all to bed, here's a cold night, but husband, eyes cling close and we's blend feet. In other words, husband, I'll cling close and we will blend our feet, mingle our feet together to keep warm, which is a lovely image. But she's saying eyes instead of I'll. So that's what I would call that a kind of syntactic or morphological difference in the language.
Mm-hmm.
So that is Yorkshire dialect in 1683. That's really the start of the study of dialect and particularly Yorkshire dialect. We could just jump forward a bit for a little bit more of that. I've got a book here called Dialect of Leeds. Again, it's not really clear who it's by, but the title of it is, and this is published in 1862, The Dialect of Leeds and Its Neighbourhood, illustrated by conversations and tales of common life, etc., to which are added a copious glossary, that's the clavis, notices of the various antiquities, manners and customs, and general folklore of the district. So it's not a slim book. It's about 400 pages, where again the person who wrote it has gone and done linguistic research on the streets of Leeds, and gathered a lot of data about how people are speaking there. And he wasn't alone. We've got another book here that is about mid-Yorkshire dialect. There's a lot of this going on in the 19th century, and then again in the 20th century. And he's then put that into a whole series of little dialogues and sketches. So he's again sort of turned it into literature. And he's given us a list of the words. Again, a lot of which are words that I don't think you would hear on the streets of Leeds 160 years later. But we're going to try that out because I've got 8 words that I've taken from the glossary here. And Ben and Eloise haven't seen these before we came together today.
Never.
And what I've done is I've got the 8 words and I've got the 8 meanings, but I have mixed them up. So you've got to guess which meaning goes with which word. So I'm going to read out the meaning, the words, and then I'm going to read out the meanings, and then I'm going to ask you each to see if you can have a guess.
Okay.
Right, so the words are Asnook, Boily, Drowning the Miller, Cut Your Lucky, Man and Shirt, Pop Shop, Torfil, and Suck the Hammer. And then the 8 meanings: leave or escape, pawnbroker, die, put too much water in the baking mixture, accept the consequences of a misdeed, a place that is below the fire grate, proud, baby food. So, you're going to have a go, Eloise?
Yeah, can I have some guesses?
Have a guess.
I'm
We'll do it one by one, so have a guess at one.
Have a guess at one. Okay. I had a couple in mind. I might start with...
Do your best one.
All right. I was thinking, cut your lucka. Is that accept consequences of misdeed? Like, cut your losses?
Yeah, I see what you mean there. Yeah, it's actually not that.
No.
That is a good guess. That is a good. There is a logic to it. I think the key thing is show you're working, and the working's good. It just so happens. Certainly, but there's another one that is cut your lucky. If it's not, can you think if
it's not
cut your
that
lucky is
one.
not accept the consequences of a misdeed? The answer to that one is it's leave or escape.
Oh.
And I think if you think of an expression like cut and run.
Okay.
Or if you said I'm going to cut my losses, what you really mean is I'm getting out of this
quick
situation.
Losses yeah, okay. I was almost there.
Yeah, you were. I've come across that one, something like it in I think in a Dickens novel once. So, but never heard it since. But we have got cut your losses.
I wonder what made that change from then lucky to losses, because it's like two opposite things.
Yeah.
I wonder what caused that to change.
Yeah, that I don't know. So. Shall we, for the next thing, shall we say which one we think is accept the consequences of the misdeed?
I think I know.
Yeah.
But
go on then.
I could be completely wrong. I think it's suck the hammer.
Suck the hammer. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
It does make sense, doesn't it? And again, I've never heard that, but I have heard an equally kind of strange scenario, which is bite the bullet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Bite the bullet. Yeah.
So it's a sort of variation on that. You know, the thing that is hurting you or
you just have to
damaging
grit
you,
your
you've
teeth
got to
and
kind
get
of
on with it or hold your tongue.
Yeah. So we've eliminated. I matched up 2 there.
Okay.
So Ben, do you want to have a go?
Yeah. Drowned in the miller. I think means to put too much water in the baking mix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a figure of speech, isn't it? And it works quite well like that.
Yeah.
For the miller is a figure of speech for the bread.
Yeah.
So that picks up nicely with our discussion about bread cakes.
Yeah.
Did we have that discussion? I can't remember.
No, we haven't.
No,
we didn't actually do it, did we?
No, we skipped it. I think we skipped over it.
Now's a perfect time to.
Yeah. Well, we could just do that one now.
Yeah.
Comes back to the dialect one. I wanted to have it because you can never. In fact, if you ever want to have get a good discussion going, just bring in a piece of bread that is smaller than a loaf, but is a complete thing in itself, and ask people what it's called. And I would say it's a roll.
Yep. I'd say it's probably a bap.
I'd say a balm.
So we've got there we are, balm, and then also a bread cake.
Yeah,
I have heard, and that's not kind of natural to me, but
balm cake, bread cake,
balm
yeah.
cake, bread cake, right.
But I just got to balm.
Yeah, there's a source of constant argument in my house whether it's like bread cake, roll, bap, or my mum says stotty cake. But that's only because she grew up in Newcastle and then she moved over like when she was in her teens. But she still sometimes says stotty cake.
Right.
It's quite common. And then if we don't agree on it, then she'll stick to her guns. It's a stotty cake.
Stotty cake.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll bring that one back in when we get round eventually to discussing Geordie accents and dialect, I think. That will be interesting to come back. So there we are. We've got all those different ones about the bread. Now we've done that. Let's come back then. We've got 3 out of these. So back to you, Eloise.
Oh no, I'm very bad at this. For die, I was thinking. For pop shop, I was thinking it's either die or pawnbroker.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's going to be the funnier one like die, or
Well,
it's going to be the more sensible one.
No, you're right. It's pawnbroker.
Yeah.
Pop shop is a word that I have heard used for that.
I'd never heard that.
Yeah. I'm never quite sure if that is actually related to that. Have you heard the expression popped his clogs?
That's what I was thinking. So, like, if someone's popped the clogs, then they would die. Dead. So I thought pop shop was like, oh, he's popped to the shop, you know.
Yeah. I've got the feeling pop your clogs may have something to do with if someone's died, you can pawn their shoes.
Oh.
If you are short of money.
Okay.
Because they don't need them anymore.
Oh.
That's speculation. I haven't actually researched that. But anyway, so we've got left Asnook, Boily, Man and Shirt, and Torfil. And so, what do you think one of those means, Ben?
I want to say man and shirt means proud.
That's it.
Yeah.
It is. So I imagine an expression like, "Oh, he's all man and shirt."
Yeah.
Oh.
The reason I'm going off that is because I've recently read A Tale of Two Cities.
Oh yeah.
And all of like the people who are like quite high up in society, who are the prideful people and look, you know, down on the lesser people, all wear fancy clothes and aristocratic like gowns and stuff.
Right.
So I just thought maybe.
Yeah. So it's to do with your appearance. And
Yeah.
you're pleased with yourself, like that. Yeah. Right. Good. That's great. That's the second Dickens reference we've had in this episode. That's really good. So
That's
have
me.
another go, Eloise.
What is die going to be? Is it...
Well, there's only
I
three
really
things it
wanna
can be
get
now. Asnook, boilie, or torfil.
Is it Asnook? No.
It's not that.
No way. I'm so bad at this.
To be fair, I don't think there is a kind of logic to what Asnook and boilie are, but there
Okay.
isn't a logic to why torfil is die. But torfil,
Oh, Torfil's die.
torfil is die. I don't know. I can't see any connection. So we just got now Asnook and boilie, and they must be the place that's below the fire grate and the baby food. So which is which?
There's logic for both of them that I'm like thinking, but I don't know. I'd maybe say boilie is baby food.
Yes, that's right, isn't it? Because
I would have guessed the opposite
Oh,
again.
right. Okay. Well, you'll understand when we'll just do boilie first. So I guess it means it's food that you boil.
Yeah.
You boil it up into sort of mush. Yeah. But at least it's been boiled, so it's not going to be poisonous. And so the baby's got a better chance of surviving if you're giving them boiled food, no matter how horrible it is. And so Asnook, well, it makes more sense. We did have that word in the 1683 dialogue, nook.
Yeah.
It means a nook, a little corner.
It's ash nook.
It's the ash nook.
Yeah.
It's the corner where the ash falls.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
that's what that one is. So the word nook is one we've got here, and we had it in the 1683 as well. So that's it. So yes, you got some, and some it would be hard for us to get.
I don't think I'll ever forget these now. At least.
Well, the one thing I would say is you're probably not going to come across them being used in the state, no matter where you go.
Yeah, the problem is now you're just going to be sat there one day and then you'll look back on this moment and just think of these random words
Yes.
and then start using them.
And it's not going to do me like any favours. I'm not going to be able to use them at any point in my
Well,
life. But I
probably
just
not,
know it
no.
now.
I feel like if I was going to use one, I think the one I like is drowning the miller. So if I was like teaching somebody to make bread, and they put too much water in, and so I say, "Whoa, don't drown the miller."
That is a good one. I like that.
So that one,
Suck the hammer.
Yeah, I really like suck the hammer
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
like in terms of biting the bullet. I really like that.
Okay, you're going to have to suck the hammer.
Yeah,
Right.
I like that. That's a
Okay,
good saying.
so our challenge is to see if we can work that into a conversation somehow.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Well, thank you very much indeed for that. Let's just really, what's the kind of regional version of goodbye?
A more modern term would be in a bit.
In a bit.
In a bit.
In a bit. I'd say in a bit as well.
Yeah.
In a bit.
I was thinking, do people in Yorkshire say ta-ra?
Ta-ra.
Ta-ra.
Ta-ra. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much indeed. Ben.
Ta very much for listening.
Ta very much. Ta very much. Thank you very much, Ben and Eloise. And that's all from us. But we will be back with our. We'll be back in a bit.
In a bit.
In a bit.
In a bit. Ta-ra. Well, we got so carried away at the end there thinking about dialect words for goodbye that we forgot to do what we said we would do earlier, which is report back on what the OED says about the words ginnel, snicket and mardy. So Ben has come back in the studio with me, and we have been just doing the looking up of those words. I've had a look for ginnel and snicket, and they're recognised there as words of dialect origin. Unfortunately, but understandably, there isn't really an answer to where they come from. So they are classified as of unknown origin. There's just a suggestion possibly that ginnel might be a kind of corruption of channel. How did you get on with Mardy, Ben?
I found actually quite a bit. It seems to be a dialect term in the Midlands and the north of England, not so used much in the south, but the etymology says that it comes from the adjective marred, with a suffix y added on. Now, mar obviously meaning spoiled, injured, ruined, and like you said it to me earlier, it came from Germanic origin.
Yes, that's it. So taking it right back to the basic word mar, meaning to damage, spoil. It's coming from that, isn't it? The past tense form marred, and then with a adjective tag on the end, making it mardy.
It's interesting that it doesn't say why specifically it links to a child, and not just a person in general, though. I mean, it doesn't really say anything on here about that, but yeah, it's quite interesting that they use it to refer to children.
Yes, so the ultimate example of mardy is a bad-tempered child.
Yeah.
Although it's not used that way, is it? A lot of the rest of the time. So, okay, right. There was one more that I had a little look at, which I think is quite interesting, and that is the word yord, which we struggled to guess what it meant when we came across it in the Yorkshire Dialogue of 1683. But the answer is it is an old dialect word for a mare, a horse, and it's a word of Norse, Scandinavian origin. So that's where that one came from, and it's possibly related to the other word that's sometimes used for an old horse, which is jade. So it's interesting there that that's an example of northern dialects containing words which are of Norse, Scandinavian origin. There's one other thing we do need to update on from what we were saying earlier, and that's back to our old friend, the word apricot. So we first discussed this in our first episode, and then we've discussed it again in this episode about the existence of the alternative pronunciation apricot. And since we had those discussions, the OED have actually updated their entry for apricot, and they've included the American pronunciation as well. And I will just play that.
Apricot. Apricot.
So there we are. It's official. We mentioned it, and then the OED did something about it. So we're going to take that as a win for English at Leeds Trinity. And well done, OED. And you've actually made Ben's life easier now, as he doesn't have to have such big arguments about how to pronounce it.
It's going to do me a lot of favours, I think.
Okay, so what will we do next? Keep listening.
You can find out more about English at Leeds Trinity from our Leeds Trinity University website at www.leedstrinity.ac.uk, and also from our at Leeds Trinity channel on YouTube, and from our Twitter account at LTU English. Thank you for listening, and thank you to Steve Oxton and ThessalianStudios.com for this music, which is called Rio After Dark.